Hi there, Alex here at mixinglessons.com. In this video, I'm going to give you an introduction into what is included in the Luna Pro bundle. So when you download Luna, you've got two options. There's a free version and there's a paid for version, the Pro bundle. And that gives you a collection of plugins, virtual instruments, and what Luna calls extensions. And so in this video, I'm going to give you a brief overview of those and an introduction to those. Before we make a start, I've got 3 free guides that I think you'll find really useful if you mix music or if you record vocals. I've got an EQ cheat sheet, a compression cheat sheet, and a vocal recording guide. And you can get all 3 of those PDF guides completely free by heading over to mixinglessons.com/free-downloads. And the link to that is in the description. Okay, so we'll start off with the plugins, then we'll go through the virtual instruments, and then we'll have a look at the extensions. So the first 3 plugins that we'll have a look at are part of the Pultec Passive EQ collection. And so the Pultec Passive EQ collection gives you the EQP1A, the MEQ5, and the HLF3C. And so these are all emulations of analog tube EQs. And so we'll just have a very brief look at each of these. With the EQP1A, you have a low band where you can select the frequency and then you can either boost or attenuate that frequency. And actually what's quite interesting with this plugin is that you can do both at the same time, which can be quite interesting. In the second band, you can select the frequency, you can boost this band, and you can select how broad or narrow the boost is that you're making. And then you have a third band where you can attenuate the high end, and so you can select which frequency you're attenuating at. The next is the MEQ5, and here you have 2 bands where you can boost, and then you have a band where you can attenuate. And then you have the HLF3C, and this plugin gives you a low-pass filter and a high-pass filter. And so these are 3 really nice EQs. I would describe them as very musical EQs. Okay, the next 3 plugins that you get with the Luna Pro bundle are from the Teletronics LA2A Leveler collection. And so these are 3 variations of LA2A compressors. And so you have the LA2A Silver, the LA2A Grey, and the LA2. The Silver is the fastest, the Grey is more of a medium compressor, and then the LA2 is the slowest of the 3. And you'll see with the Silver and the Grey, you can run them either as a compressor or as a limiter. With all 3, you're also able to make them more sensitive to what's going on in the high end and less sensitive to what's going on in the low end, which can be really useful. And so these are 3 variations of the obviously very iconic and well-known LA2A range of compressors. Moving on to some of the effects plugins, the first is the Galaxy Tape Echo. This is an emulation of a tape delay and a spring reverb, and this can be a lot of fun to play around with. You can use it from anything from a very subtle delay right through to creating sort of crazy and immersive effects. Then there's a reverb, and it's an emulation of a plate reverb. So this is a really, really nice reverb. It sounds great, it's really easy to use, has all the main settings that you would want from a reverb. There's a low cut, and as far as I can tell, this is cutting the frequencies on the way into the plugin. Obviously pre-delay, reverb time, and then bass and treble controls to sort of tune the tone of the reverb. And I found that this sounds really good on drums, vocals, guitars, pretty much anything that I've thrown at it so far. Next we have a channel strip. It's the Century Tube channel strip. So it gives you a preamp, 3-band EQ with fixed frequencies on the high and low, and then a sweepable frequency in the middle. A nice compressor, very simple, 1 control, and then control over the output gain. And this comes with lots of presets. So if you click here, you can select from various presets, and that's also the case with all of the other plugins that I've shown you so far. You're able to select from a list of presets. Okay, next let's have a look at the virtual instruments. So rather than loading virtual instruments onto the insert points, like you do in some DAWs, you load them up here if you have an instrument channel. Then you can select which virtual instrument you're using here. So the first one we'll look at is Shape. So Shape is a virtual instrument plugin that has lots and lots of different options. You have acoustic and electric drums, keys, organs, electric guitars, acoustic guitars, strings, and so on. I've had a play around with lots of different ones. They sound really, really nice. It's a really versatile plugin. You've got lots of options here. And these are all really, really high quality sounding virtual instruments. Next is the Polymax synth. And so this is an emulation of a sort of an analog synth. I've listened to some sound examples from this virtual instrument, and everything I heard sounded great, and it definitely made me interested in diving a bit deeper into this and starting to have a play around with this. And in addition to those two virtual instruments, you also get the ARP arpeggiator, which you're able to load onto an instrument track. And so if you're working with virtual instruments and things like synthesizers, then this will be a useful tool to have. Now it's worth noting that the Shape virtual instrument and the ARP arpeggiator are both included in the free version of Luna as well. So most of these things that I'm showing you aren't, but these two are, and there's one other that is also included in the free version that I'll mention later on. Okay, next let's move on to the extensions in Luna. So first of all, we have the API Vision channel strip extension. And so when I say extension, what I mean is that this runs directly from the mixer or from the mix window. So if you saw the review video that I did a couple of weeks ago, you'll have already seen me talk a little bit about this API Vision channel strip. But just to briefly go over it again, what this gives you is a line amp, high and low pass filters, a gate or expander, a compressor limiter, and then an EQ, and there are two different EQs to choose from. And so you can load this onto any channel, and you can run it from here, or you can click here and you can open it up here. And this gives you a couple more options, and it lets you see things side by side. Now you can run the API Vision channel strip as an extension like this, or if you wanted to, you could run it as a normal plugin. And that just gives you a few different options, and we'll actually come back to that a little bit later in the video. Next we have an API bus compressor, and so this can be inserted onto any of the channels in your mix directly on the mixer as an extension. Once again, you can click here, and this opens up a few more options. Or alternatively, once again, you don't have to run this as an extension, you could just run it as a plugin. And of course, once again, you have access to some presets, and that's also the case with the channel strip as well. Okay, next let's look at the tape extensions. If you saw last week's video, I went into a bit more depth on these tape machines and the sort of internal signal flow that's going on with these tape machines. But to briefly recap, on any of your audio channels or your instrument channels, you can select which tape extension you would like to use. And so that gives you the option of two different tape machines. So you have one which emulates the sound of the Studer A800. You control the global settings or the preset for this tape machine over here. And then for each channel which has the Studer tape machine selected as its tape extension, you dial in how much saturation you would like. Secondly, there's the Oxide tape machine. This is all preset driven. And once again, you dial in the amount of saturation that you would like. Now with both of these tape machines, if you would like to, you can load either of them as a plugin rather than an extension. And that gives you slightly more options, and you can insert those onto any of the tracks in your mix. And I believe I'm right in saying that the Oxide tape machine is also included in the free version of Luna as well as the Pro bundle. I'm not sure whether it runs as an extension in the free version or just as a plugin, so if you know the answer to that, please feel free to leave a comment. Now on your bus channels and your master fader or your main output channel, the tape extension that you have here is an emulation of an Ampex ATR 102. And so that gives you an emulation of this 2-track tape machine for your whole mix or any of the bus channels that you have in your mix. And you have control over a few different settings from the mixer, but you control each of these tape machines individually, and you have access to some more controls over here. In the Pro bundle, you also get the API summing extension, and so this can be added to any of your bus tracks or again to your master fader. And so it's loaded up here in the input section. And that emulates the sound of the analog summing that you would find on an API console. Now there is one last plugin which comes with the Luna Pro bundle, but unfortunately I'm not able to show you it. So when you buy the Pro version of Luna, you get an emulation of the API 212L preamp. And this would emulate the character and the sound that you would get by recording through this preamp. But to do that, you have to use an Apollo interface, and you have to have an Apollo interface connected, which unfortunately I don't, so I can't show you this plugin. But if you use the API Vision channel strip as a plugin rather than as an extension, then rather than the line amp that you get in the extension, you will get an emulation of the 212L mic pre. So that's something to be aware of even if you don't have an Apollo interface connected. And so that's just a quick overview of the plugins, the extensions, and the virtual instruments that you get when you purchase the Luna Pro bundle. So I hope you found that interesting. I've been using Luna for a few weeks now and I'm really enjoying using it, so I would highly encourage you to check it out. Thank you very much for watching this video. Don't forget to head over to mixinglessons.com/free-downloads for that free EQ cheat sheet, that free compression cheat sheet, and that vocal recording guide. And I'll see you next time.